Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to double down on this executive order that Trump just signed, making homelessness illegal. And we're going to do that by doing an analysis on a recent series of sculptures called The Homeless Jesus. Let me show that to you. Good morning, everybody. Now, one of you sent this to me. I was not aware of the homeless Jesus on a park bench with the pierced feet. Look at this, you guys. So we're going to get into that today. We're also going to get into an American citizen who was told that they had no rights during an immigration sweep based on their profile. No rights. And also, we're going to look at a sad story about a couple that was killed while hiking at the Devil's Den right here in Arkansas. We're going to get into that and some other stories today. Now, I won't be covering the scrooting today, just because there's plenty of channels probably all over that. And, there's such a thing as fatigue when too many channels are covering the same thing. And so I'm going to spare you guys the whole scrooting that happened. If you haven't heard about the scrooting, um, there's some like office building scrooting going on right now. And I'm sure there's stuff to decode, but I feel like those are LARPs to entrap true channels. And so you got to be very careful about the way you talk about those events. Otherwise, they'll just go through and sweep channels right off the board. So we're not going to cover that today, but let's get started with this bizarre series of homeless Jesus sculptures because I found something pretty crazy. Now, if you're late to the topic, let me do a quick review on this. So yesterday we covered how Trump just declared war on the homeless, making it illegal to be homeless in America. Now, this includes van lifers and anybody who calls the street or calls nature their home. There are a lot of van lifers in the truth community. Some of you have YouTube channels. Just by its very nature of being homeless and basically being out of the system, wanting to be out of this unfair system, being homeless is a form of protest. We're going to get into those aspects as well because it is the best way, if you're called to do it, to completely detach from the system. And many of you have done this. It's not easy being homeless, but sometimes it's an act of protest. People saying, you know what? We don't believe in this system the way you guys have it set up. It's not fair, and I want no part of it. And this used to be a basic human right to do that, but not anymore. Because in yesterday's show, we explained that this whole thing is in direct opposition to God's natural order, which was exercised, of course, by Jesus himself. Jesus himself protested the system. Now, I also explained that the modern homeless archetype has been fashioned in such a way for us to see homelessness as a result of irresponsibility and to attach negative feelings towards it. This was done intentionally, and this was hyperbolized by the left in a negative way so that nobody would come to its defense when all this gets swept away. This is why the left was feeding the drug problem with free hypodermic needles and all this stuff. They did it intentionally. This is why, the public use of drugs became acceptable. They did this intentionally so they could create an archetype of what it looks like to be homeless. And then they show us the worst versions of this, like Skid Row and these places where people are doing drugs in plain sight. And then nobody comes to the defense of this lifestyle. Now, what was really neat in yesterday's show is how many of you came forward in the comments and you said, Casey, I'm homeless and I'm not on drugs. Those are the kind of testimonies that we need to counterbalance these fake inflated statistics that are out there trying to demean and disparage homelessness. Many of you came forward. Some of you had whole families that are living in a trailer, or you're homeless and you're not on drugs. And you guys, we need to stand up for these people. We need to stand up for them because nobody else is. And I'll explain to you what the end game is, where Trump's going with this, where the world is going with this whole thing, because it's all going to be about forcing every single person into the economic system. Notice how new business models emerge every so often. Every 5 or 6 years, you'll hear of a new business model that emerges, right? We all hear it. Something that people start doing that makes them a good amount of money, but it's not documented. Well, what is the first thing that our system does? It consumes it, regulates it, turns it into something that is no longer profitable. We all saw it with the cannabis growers of Northern California. It used to be a free market with free trade and exchange of cash. And then what happened when it was legalized? The government came in and overregulated it, made impossible standards for the typical farmer growing maybe 100 plants. That's just one example of dozens I could give you of people who are industrious, entrepreneurial, who have businesses. And then lo and behold, here comes the federal government, or here comes the state government, because they can't stand that people can exist outside of their economic system. That's the opposite of freedom, you guys. It should be a choice. And if they want you in the economic system, there needs to be incentives for you to do so. It shouldn't be a forced thing. But yet here we are in what we're told is the freest country in the world. Now, we also discussed yesterday that drugs were intentionally made part of the homeless archetype to sway public opinion against homelessness. And we said that drugs were not part of the homeless issue in Jesus' day, at least from what we can gather when we read the gospel. Now, I understand there was pharmakia in the Bible. I get that. But we're talking specifically about the homeless aspect surrounding Jesus' ministry. Pharmakia is not mentioned in that. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't read anything in the gospel about that. Homelessness in the gospel was more of a symbol of people who lived outside of the tyrannical system. It was a form of protest. Why do you think it was the very first place that Jesus went to save souls? It was the very first place that Jesus went to save souls. In the wide open fields, there were people that were hungry, gathering together. And this suggests in my mind that there were probably large camps of homeless people with no food. Because if they had food, Jesus wouldn't have had to feed them, right? And if you put together all the pieces of the evidence of the gospel and you think about it, Jesus' gleaning of the field was a form of rebellion against a corrupt system, who then tried to use a technicality to excuse their greed, accusing him of gleaning wheat on the Sabbath. It wasn't about the Sabbath, you guys. It was about Jesus living outside the economic system. It's no different today. There's nothing new under the sun. It's the same thing recycled over and over again. Jesus lived outside the system and they couldn't stand it that he was gleaning wheat. They couldn't stand it that he could take that wheat and out of a few loaves of bread, he could feed entire crowds of people. Jesus was telling us the future. He was sharing with us that the waste of the economic system could feed all the hungry. It was a metaphor for the last days and shined a spotlight on the greed of men. who couldn't even bring themselves to allow people to eat the waste that they cast off to the sides, the edges of the field. Are you starting to see the full picture now? This is why you have to read between the lines of the gospel, even because our churches are not talking about these aspects of Jesus' ministry. We've all heard the gleaning of the fields 100 times going to church, haven't we? But you never heard it the way I just explained it to you, have you? It was rebellion against the system. Jesus was a sovereign citizen. Now, I hate even using labels, but if you want to use the standards, the modern standards, this is what he would have been. He was actually accused not only of calling himself God, but there is a verse in the New Testament that says that he was also arrested for forbidding the paying of tribute to Caesar. That would be taxes. So, one of you sent me this story on the homeless Jesus sculptures. And it took me a minute. I sat on this for about 24 hours because I couldn't quite figure out what was going on here because it kind of looks like a good thing at first, right? Then I realized that this was a gaslighting ritual. They reduced Jesus to a homeless grifter. And they ignore the wider themes of judgment against the system that Jesus demonstrated, as I just explained to you. There are 50 of these homeless Jesus around the world. They started placing these in 2013, and I believe this was a foreshadowing of the shape of things to come, making it illegal to be homeless. The original sculpture that you saw in the picture here is at the Regis College in Toronto, Canada. So I start to look at the numbers as I always do, and I was stunned by the numerical markers. Let's take a look, you guys. Take a look at your screen. Now, I'm going to start getting you guys involved in some of these decodes because we've been doing this long enough where you should be able to pick up the same stuff that I'm picking up, right? Take a look at your screen. Look at the dimensions of the sculptures. Remember, there are 50 of these. Look at the dimensions of the sculpture, and now look at the GPS coordinate of the sculpture. And you guys tell me what this means, and then I'll give you my thoughts. But I want to give you an opportunity so that the people that are new to the channel don't come in and think, this guy's just making everything up. No, because if all however many hundred of you are in the chat come up with the same conclusions, then it gives more credence, doesn't it? Look at the dimensions, and now look at the GPS coordinate. And you guys tell me what you see. Okay, now I'm going to go in the chat. Unbelievable. Okay, let's see who gets some answers here. I see a lot of people saying 666. That's the obvious one, but let's dig a level deeper. Let's dig a level deeper. Christy says the screwing was on the 33rd floor. Thanks, Christy. Let's dig a level deeper. Remember, you're looking at the entire... There you go. Carlos got it. 66 and 99. And what have we said that represents? Thanks, iron sharpens iron. Yes, the twinning. Yes. And the yin and yang. 6 and the 9 is the yin and the yang. And we saw it again as well in the 91, 61. See that? Wow. So, pretty crazy, right? Pretty crazy. Now, I believe these sculptures were a ritual spell, foreshadowing the coming paradigm shift against homelessness. In fact, check this out. When I was doing my research, They literally say that churches were rejecting these sculptures. They couldn't get the churches to allow them to put these sculptures and place these sculptures. And so essentially, Jesus was homeless. Nobody wanted him. This is some kind of ritual, I believe, as they LARPed the rejection of Jesus. So remember, never forget, you might not be homeless now, but it is the last right that you have to opt out of the coming beast system. Because without a home, you go into custody. And that's where all this is headed. And that's the setup of the executive order that Trump just signed. One day, you might need to be homeless and you will no longer have the ability. Instead, you'll go into a FEMA camp. So we need to stand up for these people's rights now. Otherwise, one day they could be coming for us. Now, let's get into this next story about this couple that went hiking. You guys, spiritual warfare is real. This couple went hiking. Let's listen to this.
Inside of a state park on Saturday. According to investigators, the victims, identified as Clinton and Kristen Brink, were hiking with their young daughters in Devil's Den State Park, right there near Little Rock, when they were attacked. This is the moment police and state troopers found their bodies.
They're on the lower Devil's Den Trail. I think I see you right there. I've got two bodies down here.
It's unclear whether the girls witnessed the murders. The park has beefed up security and response and closed all the trails to the public today, and the search for the killer continues. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park joins us now. Kathy, it looks here like police released a description of the man they're looking for. What do we know?
Hey there, Morgan. Yeah, so this is still very much a developing story, a lot that we don't know. But according to police, the crime happened just before 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday as the family went hiking, as you said, at Devil's Den State Park. The couple was found dead on a hiking trail, which is described to be a remote rural area. The terrain is quite rugged. There's no cell service in the area. Their 7- and 9-year-old children, according to police, were with the couple at the time. They were not injured, and police say they're actually with other family members now. But at this time, it is unclear if those young girls witnessed the murders. NBC News was able to briefly get a family member on the phone. They said they're just too emotional right now to share any statements, but said Clinton and Kristen Brink were a loving couple, devoted parents, and happened to move to Arkansas just 3 weeks ago, so recently.
Do we know, Kathy, where the girls are right now?
Yeah, according to police, they say that they are with other family members. But let me give you a little bit more description of the suspect, because you mentioned this is still an ongoing manhunt. This is an active investigation. The suspect right now is described as a white male, medium build. He was wearing dark pants, long sleeve shirt, dark ball cap, had fingerless gloves, was also wearing sunglasses. And then he was actually seen driving out of the park. He was in a black sedan, likely or possibly a Mazda. And what's interesting is that the license plate was actually covered by tape, and he was heading toward the nearby highway, either Highway 170 or 220. And law enforcement, of course, are asking members of the public to help. If you were in the area on Saturday, look through your phone, those GoPro videos, see if you have any clues possibly linked to the suspect, Morgan.
Wow, that is just insane. The Devil's Den. Now, we're not supposed to live in fear, but when you go to the den of the devil, the place is probably named as such, probably for a reason. There could be some spiritual activity going on there, spiritual warfare. We know there are places on earth, and I believe this is in the Bible, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are places on the earth that are, I guess you could call it hallowed ground or cursed ground. We know about the cursed dust. And so there could be heightened dark spiritual activity. But wow, the two daughters, 7 and 9, it's so weird. Trump's 79. I know he probably had nothing to do with this, but it's just the numerical synchronicities are pretty profound here, aren't they? So what are your guys' thoughts on this? How did the girls escape? There's lots of questions surrounding this. Did they witness it? Did they run away? which probably saved their life. What was the motive of this? Was this an attempted kidnapping and the parents defended their kids and told them to run, maybe? Run, get help, maybe? Fortunately, they listened. Otherwise, they'd probably be kidnapped, trafficked, dead. Who knows? Or was this some kind of personal matter? Some people thought this could have been a personal hit or a personal matter. Um, Others think it could be a random act of violence. Kind of hard to tell, isn't it? Stay away from parks and bodies of water, says Water Otter. There's a whole genre of YouTube channels out there that go in that examine national parks and disappearances and violence and crimes and things like this. So that's interesting because here we have another aspect of something happening in a national park. I'm sure there'll be more details as the days go on about this particular case, but I thought this was a case of note. So Annie says, Bigfoot? Hard to tell. I mean, unless they don't even really say how they died yet. Like, were they shot? Were they beaten? Were they stabbed? So, can you imagine if the kids were like, yeah, there was a large furry creature? No, they gave a description. So it must have been, the person that's described, possibly. Wow. All right. Well, let's get into Ghislaine Maxwell. Boy, this doesn't quit, doesn't? Now she's making a pitch to the Supreme Court. Listen to this guy.
Days after sitting down with the DOJ, Maxwell's legal team argues that the government has a, quote, obligation to honor a non-prosecution agreement with Jeffrey Epstein that they say protects her from any criminal charges. This comes after this comes just hours after President Trump maintained that he's allowed to pardon Maxwell, even though nobody's asked him about it. Take a listen.
Well, I'm allowed to give her a pardon, but nobody's approached me with it. Nobody's asked me about it. I never had the privilege of going to his island, and I did turn it down, but a lot of people in Palm Beach were invited to his island. In one of my very good moments, I turned it down. I didn't want to go to his island.
Whoa, that's cryptic. One of my good moments? Wow. So he obviously knew about the island, which is why he didn't go there. So now the plot thickens. Because even though he didn't go to the island, he flew on a plane named after an abused girl. So no matter how you slice this, if you continue to be around a person that you know has a creepy island where things are happening, you're still culpable on some level. So what's happening here? Well, Ghislaine Maxwell is now appealing to the Supreme Court, says she's protected under this immunity deal. She should have never went to jail. Trump's on the verge of probably pardoning her. This whole thing falls apart. Now, what can you do? Well, I've stood by my statement about the no vote movement. If they had an election and only 10 million people showed up to vote, that would send a very strong message, wouldn't it? It would send a message that we don't trust either side of the political party and something needs to drastically change. Now, I don't think that'll ever happen. We don't have the reach to start a trend like that here on YouTube because of the way YouTube works as social media. They've silenced anybody with any real free thought. They've been silenced. The only people that are proliferating on YouTube are people that have chosen a side, the right-left paradigm. I mean, that's just by definition. I'm not going to complain about it, but it's by definition. We're programmed to pick one or the other. We're not programmed to opt out because opting out would be the fringe, wouldn't it? Would not be the mainstream, just by definition. But the only way to send a message is to say, we don't respect this establishment, the way it's run. It's corrupt all the way through the top. Here are the examples. Both sides working together to cover up something that should have immediately been released to the public. Just block out the faces of the children and whatever is exposed and give us the information. This should have happened years ago. And here we went through several presidencies where the information was hidden. It wasn't just Trump and Biden. It was Obama before that. A lot of this was going on during the Obama years, this investigation into Epstein. So there's nothing else we can really do other than opt out. Okay. We're not all going to be able to get together and show up to a protest, because what will happen? They'll simply put in provocateurs into the protest and turn it into something violent or different. That's not going to work. We've already tried that with the crapper hole. So all you can do is opt out. That's why I'm out here. I'm opting out. I don't want to be in their mortgage system. I don't want to be in their job market that's all getting taken by AI anyway. I don't want to be in any part of their system. I don't want to buy a bunch of things that I think I need, like sports cars and, all their lavish trips. I've opted out of the system to the best of my ability. Obviously, there are people that have opted out even more. They just go homeless. But now they're coming after that. So this is where we're at, you guys. Now, what else is going on? Well, check this out. Told you this was going to happen. This U.S. citizen was told, you have no rights. And it was all caught on video. Now, this is only the latest in a string of reports of ICE agents rolling over American rights and freedoms under the guise of, oh, it's an ICE raid, so we can do what we want right now because, we're dealing with illegals. Yes, you're dealing with illegals, but you're also dealing with American citizens and mixed in with that. And until you know who is who, now the whole thing is ridiculous because there's such a thing as human rights, aren't there? Citizen and immigrant is just a label. The real problem here that nobody's talking about is how the United States destroyed Mexico and destroyed all these countries through CIA programs, overturned leaders. You guys, some of these Central American countries used to be wealthy. They grew bananas and sugar. They used to be super wealthy and they had great lives. You look at some of this history, some of these Central American and South American countries. The streets were clean. People had money. It wasn't until the CIA came in and said, oh, we're going to turn Central and South America into our workforce. NAFTA. Then they put in their own corrupt leaders. That's why people want to leave there and come here. Not that it's much better, but it's better than where they're at. That is the true problem. Because, one, if there was no reason to come here, they wouldn't come here, right? Number two, they're coming here because of the situation that they're in now, that we, the United States, through our policies, created. And everybody knows this, but for some reason we forget when it comes to this stuff. Now, I'm not trying to justify illegal immigration. What I'm trying to tell you is there is a root cause to all this that we are responsible for. We as Americans get to enjoy certain things because of the oppression of other people working for peanuts. And until we come to terms with that, then this is going to happen. Let's listen to this guy.
Advocates in Florida say the expansion of state and local law enforcement's role in illegal immigrant crackdowns contributed to the violent arrest of an American teen. CBS's Christian Benavides reports when the 18-year-old said he was a U.S. citizen, the response was, "You have no rights."
Wait, that's not how you arrest people. On the ground.
This was the moment Border Patrol and Florida Highway Patrol officers detained a U.S. citizen while conducting immigration enforcement. Kenny Linez, an 18-year-old high school senior, was on his way to work as a landscaper with 2 other co-workers and his mother, who was driving.
I got rights to talk, bro.
You got no rights here.
I do.
Illegal, brother. Get up.
I was born and raised with.
As a U.S. citizen, you hear that from an authority figure. What goes through your heart, through your mind?
I don't know, like, it hurts me hearing them saying that I have no rights here because I look like Hispanic.
The video comes as Florida will deputize more than 1,800 additional law enforcement officers to conduct immigration operations as part of a statewide crackdown.
No resiste, no resiste.
They were pulled over for having too many people sitting on the front seat of the car. 2 passengers were undocumented. Officers deployed a taser.
What am I doing? Hey, Kevin!
We're not resisting, we're not committing any crime to, run away.
Linez's phone keeps rolling after he is detained, capturing this exchange between the officers.
Starting to resist more now. We're gonna end up shooting someone. Just remember, you can smell that too with a $30,000 bone.
Laws are just, they're no longer being respected. They're no longer being upheld.
Mariana Blanco is a director of the Guatemala Maya.
So they mention a $30,000 bonus. They're essentially mercenaries now.
Center, an advocacy group that opposes Florida's new crackdown.
Deputizing these agents so quickly is going to bring severe consequences.
Florida Highway Patrol did not respond to a request for comment. U.S. Customs and Border Protection said that the individuals resisted arrest and that their officers are facing a surge in assaults while doing their job. In their statement, they made no mention of the U.S. citizen who was detained.
Now, obviously, this situation puts law enforcement in a bad position, and it puts American citizens who are caught up in the fray in a bad position. Some are resisting. The public is angry about this. They're throwing bottles at officers, which is not okay, obviously. And this obviously is increasing the aggression of the officers, as you just saw in that video. And in the midst of all that, American freedoms are being eroded. Now, some people argue that this is necessary. Necessary to root out illegals is what some people believe. But it's only a matter of time before some of these people start dying. We've got money on the table, huge incentives for these people to go out and get more people arrested and get put in these detention facilities. There's a lot of pressure on both sides, isn't there? This is a hot mess, you guys. This is not being done in a good way. And at the root of all this is that we, the United States, will not acknowledge what we created in South and Central America. We caused this problem. And until we disincentivize Central and South America from the corruption that we created and let their natural democratic processes take hold again so that they can elect real people to run their countries who they trust and hold accountable, who they can march into a prison if they are not doing the will of the people, then this is going to continue to happen. Yes, we have a wall. That's great. So at least these detentions and all this stuff and deportations aren't just a revolving door. At least we have that going on. But the problem persists. It would take decades to basically go through and deport all these people. It would literally take decades. We did the math at their current rate of deportations. So this is what we have to watch on the news for the next 10 or 20 years. Now, some, of course, will self-deport. But as I said, if you've been here for at least 10 years, you're not even going to recognize your home country anymore. You're not going to know where to go. And so the people have been almost like naturalized through just being here. So I don't know all the answers, you guys. We're just having a discussion about this. I feel like this is just practice and a segue to the AI digital police state, which they're already using these tactics to root these people out. And it's eroding on the freedoms of Americans. Now, let's get into this last story today. This is crazy. Phillies fan seemingly caught on video in Yankee Stadium in the middle of a sex act. Can you believe this? Now, it took me a minute to figure out what this whole astronomer affair at the, what was it, Coldplay concert? I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, what a dumb story. I was like, there's got to be something to this. So I sat on it. I think it's been about a week since we saw that astronomer. They kept saying the astronomer, the astronomer. Like, who is this guy? And who's this lady? And what really happened? What's going on here? Well, apparently he was having an affair with his woman, and they got caught on the camera. I forget what they called, like the kiss cam or something like that, where they zoom in on couples. We've all seen this when you go to the stadium. They zoom in on people so that you become the spotlight. And I couldn't quite figure out what this LARP was about, because they're all LARPs, right? Anything you see in the mainstream media is a LARP. And then it all clicked, because this story came out just today. This couple caught in the middle of a sex. This is crazy. Like, what would prompt you to do this? And this is what tells me that this has to be a LARP, because nobody does this. Now, if they're on an airplane or something, I could see how that might happen, because people get weird on airplanes. But this is crazy, you guys. So we've got the Ministry of Privacy and Ethics, right? Launching this live action role play at Yankee Stadium. And I think what's behind this here is there is no expectation of privacy in public. And I believe they designed these series of LARPs to display a situation that nobody would have sympathy for. Obviously, a guy cheating on his wife, and these people openly having sex in a public place, which is not acceptable. There are children around. It's like, take it to the bedroom. And I believe that these situations of catching people on cam, this will spill out into the public domain, into public streets, as the AI surveillance system, which was launched by Trump and Palantir, which is called Project Gotham, as it begins to use these algorithms to detect people who are likely to commit a crime. We'll start seeing people paraded out. At first, they'll show us, extreme situations where people are doing really bad things, like child abductions or something. And they'll say, this is the camera the algorithm caught. And they'll show the person running down the street with the child. And they'll say, thanks to Project Gotham, we've been able to solve crime. We can now detect every single crime happening anywhere on the planet. And then after a while, they'll let that ride for a couple of years. Then all of a sudden, you'll start getting tickets in the mail. You'll get a ticket for parking in the wrong spot. They won't even have to have police officers, you guys. They'll say, the camera just saw you in a no parking zone. That's your license plate, isn't it? And there's your $50 ticket. Or they'll say, you jaywalked. We no longer need officers to write tickets. We got you on camera walking across the street. That doesn't have a crosswalk. That's jaywalking. That's a $50 fine. And literally, we will be policed into oblivion. You won't be able to go outside of your house without getting a ticket. You'll be constantly thinking about, am I doing something wrong? All this might even be tied into a central mainframe or database. They'll probably let store owners opt into a system. Hey, for $29.99 a month, you can send your camera feed that's in your local convenience store into Project Gotham. We'll process the data for you, and we can find real time when people are stealing from you, committing a crime. And then we'll do the investigation, and we'll get that person arrested and put in jail, because we have facial recognition. We can tell who they are. Now, look, I'm not condoning crime. And all this sounds great, right? But do you want to live in a society where you walk around You have to be careful about if you're doing anything wrong or not. What if something falls out of your bag and it's trash? Oh, that's littering. Busted. That's a $500 fine in this city. And next thing you know, we will be fined out of existence. All your property taken because you can't pay your fines under Trump's civil asset forfeiture law. That's where I think all this is headed. And this is the only way that the world powers will be able to fulfill the prophecy spoken about in the Bible of declaring true peace and security. True peace and security comes with total control, right? And now we have the processing power, we have the networks, the 5G, the 6G, we have the algorithms, we have the artificial intelligence to process all this data to keep everybody perfectly safe, which will bring in the mark. Don't you love it? Don't you love it? These people are literally insane. They are so afraid of the truth that they constantly harass us every single day with this nonsense. I can't even stand it anymore. But it tells you we're speaking the truth. It's so obvious to me at this point. Now, let's finish up with this story here. Now, this is crazy because now, for some reason, we'll read this story in a second here. Something rubbed me the wrong way when we saw these cop watchers going out to exercise their First Amendment right. And they were like, there's no expectation of privacy, right? They kept saying this. And look, I like a lot of things about the cop watch movement, but there's something about this that is now going to empower our controllers to also have the same rights. Hey, if you have no expectation of privacy in public, well, then it goes both ways. It applies to law enforcement as well, doesn't it? I feel like the whole thing was a setup. Now, not that the people that were in the movement knew this, but sometimes the enemy and the controllers use people to advance their own agenda. So for the last 6 or 7 years, we've been watching people shove cameras in people's face and say, you have no expectation of privacy, so I can film you all I want. You're in public. Well, now law enforcement can do the same thing. You have no expectation of privacy. You're in public. We can shove cameras in your face all we want. Now, let's read this. It says, given the timing of the video release, which initially came on TikTok, and that the male fan was wearing a Phillies hat and jersey, it is suspected that it came from one of the 3 showdowns this weekend. This is insane, one of the nearby fans said. The videos were recorded from behind with a row between the filmer and the couple. While no other fans were immediately within a few seats of the couple, the alleged act was in broad daylight with numerous fans in the surrounding area. Why would they do this at a baseball game? The video has amassed 40 million views. It wouldn't be the first time someone along these lines has happened in a baseball game. The couple appeared to engage in sex in 2022 at an A's game. So apparently this is a thing. Wow. Unbelievable. While the Yankees won the series final Sunday, the Phillies took the blah, blah, blah. So apparently this post, they're not showing the video here, but apparently this is viral on TikTok or whatever. So this is where we're at, you guys. I think this is where it's all headed. Okay, I'm in the chat for a bit. How are you guys today? Welcome to 2025. Wow. Yes, Satan is real. Who cares, says Kathy. Illegal on YouTube. Spirit of lust takes over. Yeah, it doesn't say exactly what they were doing. They just say sex act. Here come the jokes. Louisville 4-inch slugger. Okay, I can't read some of these. Carnivore squirrel. Yep. Remember, we're telling you guys, the animals are acting different. We've been saying this since the pandemic. Something is wrong with the animals, the zombie animals. Now they're saying squirrels are eating meat now. Now they've always been omnivorous, but when did you see a squirrel sitting chewing on a rat or something? They're always chewing on a nut, right? So it was pretty rare. Well, now it's like widespread. We've got squirrels attacking people now, like rabid squirrels, and squirrels aren't even supposed to be able to get rabies, but they're acting rabid. So crazy times, you guys. Watch the movie Children of Men. Yeah, I've seen that before. I think we decoded it once or twice. Yeah, YouTube, you can't even find stuff in the searches anymore. This is why I try to be consistent on this channel. This is why I'm live every day, except Saturday, at the same exact time. So, because you're not going to get a notification a lot of the times. So, if you just show up at the same time, you could set your alarm by it if you want. You're going to catch the shows, you know, because YouTube's lame now. You can't search anything. So you just got to show up. So fortunately, the channel is large enough to where people can find us somehow, some way, but it's getting more and more difficult. So Carlos says it must be the rabies pellets they're dropping from airplanes. Mimi has not seen squirrels eating meat yet. I saw a blue jay chasing a squirrel. Squirrel eating meat of another rodent is a display of lack of desperation. Okay. What else is going on? Squirrels run all over my deer sheds. Yeah, I set up my blind because you got to, I'm not hunting in it. Obviously, it's not season yet, but you got to get the deer acclimated to a foreign object. Otherwise, they just won't come around. So set up the blind. So hopefully they'll walk by it enough times with nothing in it to get acclimated. Police were called on a homeless woman and spending so much time in the store. Officers started yelling at me, drawing a crowd. Okay. All right, you guys. I guess I'm going to pop off of here. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. And I will talk to you guys next time. Much love.